I want to start the talk actually mentioning that this is a super experimental talk, very experimental, and so and it's live with lots of live demos. So hopefully, I will not break the demo gods, and we'll make it happen. If not, silently cheer or clap. I will not hear you, but anyway, support it if you can. So I want to start talking about Python, and one thing that is pretty obvious is that Python is very popular today, and it wasn't that through all the history of Python. When I started using Python, it was around 2001 and 2002. You can see how it was not the most popular language in the world. It was pretty down the bottom. And through history and through those years, many events led to Python being adopted more and more in specific communities. And Python had this interesting history of being adopted by specific communities that then helped increase the language in popularity and things like that. And a big change was when Guido joined Google. A lot of people started looking at Python as a serious programming language. If it was backed by Google, it was easier to actually sell other companies that it was a language that was worth exploring and stuff like this. But one question that strikes is actually, how is it possible, especially today? If we think about Python itself, it honestly doesn't have a great story for the most popular hardware framework or platform and the most popular software platform in the world. Hardware, the most used type of hardware today is mobile phones, tablets, and things like this. And Python doesn't really have a straightforward story about it. And the same applies for software. The most popular operating system, if we will, in the world today is the browser. Every computer, phone, tablet has one and runs applications on top of it. Python doesn't really have a story for Python on the browser. So it's quite interesting that it is the most popular language, programming language in the world today. And I will not touch on why, and but it's a hint is that it's built to welcome users, and it's built to make things easier. But anyway, moving to the topic of the talk itself, wouldn't it be cool if you could run Python on the browser? And that's the whole idea about PyScript. So usually at this part of the talk, I would ask who knows about PyScript, who never heard about it, etc. But being remote, we'll get straight into the agenda. So we'll talk a little bit about PyScript, what it is, what it's not, how does it look like, things like this. Specifically, we'll touch on the PyScript for data science and what is possible today, what people have been doing so far, etc., and show a few demos and examples. So first disclaimer is Python is extremely new and early in its history. And it's very alpha and under development. So if you be exploring things with PyScript, and you should be advised that we may change things, and between releases things may break, etc. So, and I really want to highlight that. Make sure you remember, even this talk is highly experimental, just like PyScript. So I want to stress that out. But first of all, what is PyScript? PyScript is a platform that enables people to run Python on the browser easily, and not only the Python version of Python, but most of the Python ecosystem on the browser, thanks to PyData, which is an implementation of Python for on top of scripting. But we'll touch on that later. It is Python with JavaScript. It's not an alternative. It's not you don't need to choose one or another. They interact with each other. It has the concept of environment management, etc. and much more. We'll touch on those later on in the talk. But why, first of all? Well, why not? I would say that's the first answer. But also, if given what I mentioned about Python, its popularity, it's very clear. Actually, Russell Keith McGee had a really great PyCon keynote talking about it, and how unpredictable events may change Python path and its popularity. And as a community, we should be thinking advanced and be thinking, how current, how up to the times Python is, and what we can do to actually improve the language so that it lasts for a long time. And I think PyScript is in that vein, looking at the future and the next generations. But looking at PyScript at a glance, PyScript itself aims to be very clean and lean, and it's basically, the experience is basically the same as you would do just writing HTML and creating a new website or a web app. You can add Python directly to the DOM. You can add Python with external files. It's aimed to be very flexible. We want to make sure that we can bring the whole ecosystem of Python to the browser. And basically, we want to empower people. We want to democratize data science and programming. So basically, we want to bring programming to the 99%. We want to make sure that the web is a friendly and hackable place. We, in the tech community, we've been looking a lot at performance and optimizing things, oftentimes making things more complicated, like server-side and client-side architecture, or making things super fast at the expense of being able to just run something or create a program out of nothing very fast. So we want to target that as well. So what do I need to get started with PyScript? Reality, you don't need really to install anything other than your browser, and then you just need to add those 2 lines to your page, your HTML page, when you're authoring it, and that should do the trick. After the launch at PyCon this year, we went through changes and stuff. We added a versioning system for PyScript, or a version pattern, and we've been releasing with the new versions. And you can use latest to actually use the latest released version of PyScript. We also have a pointer to alpha. Alpha is the version that we launched during PyCon, and we've not changed that, and mostly because a lot of people were trying it, and we didn't want to break things under their nose. You can also use unstable, which is basically updated every time we do a commit. It would be basically a nightly version where you get access to the latest features and stuff like that. But there's a likelihood that things might be broken because we didn't go through the whole testing of an entire release. And then you have the option to pin a version, and that is what you should do. Actually, you should do even with your own Python projects, just traditional Python. You should pin your versions of your dependencies, and that's the same for PyScript. So if you're trying PyScript, use that one. In the last months, since we launched about six months ago. The ecosystem around it has evolved as well. Some of the editors like PyCharm or Visual Studio Code have support for it somehow, which is very cool. And we hope that we'll keep growing and make the user experience easier and better. So let's talk about how to PyScript actually. As you can see, the experience itself is pretty much just like authoring a web page. You just add your HTML elements and things like this. You add your PyScript dependencies. You can do whatever you were used to do in the page. And then to run Python, you just need to add the PyScript tag and write your code within that tag. I know a lot of people will say it has PHP vibes, and I have to confess it's kind of true, which is not great. If you look at things just from a from the surface and at a quick glance. And we're very opinionated about PHP and how it differs from Python. And I want to make sure that, we touched on this. As an Italian, pizza and pineapple pizza is a topic that is close to my heart. And I will say that we are not joining the dark side. We are not. PyScript is not PHP. Is not intended to be PHP. And there are a bunch of reasons. And that is putting Python code within the tag is an option that we wanted to allow users because it's just fast, quick, and we can play with the code. That shouldn't be what you do when you have PyScript code that you want to run in production or seriously. You should be using the source attribute that allows you to actually write Python files and load them through the PyScript tag. That is not only because we're not PHP, but also because it's way more maintainable. It's easier to test your code. It's easier to author your code through syntax highlighting and things like this. Also, PyScript differs with PHP not only from that side of things, but also the full namespace management, different scoping, and it's Python itself. So the differences are not only the makeup or just from the perspective of seeing a tag on the HTML code. How about PyScript and JavaScript? When we launched PyScript, we had a lot of social media heat, and a lot of people were asking, actually, is JavaScript dead now, or is it a threat to JavaScript? Blah blah blah. The overall idea that we want to promote is actually that PyScript plays really well together with JavaScript, and it's actually a win-win for both ecosystems. All of a sudden, Python users can use JavaScript modules and technology that they were not able to do before, and at the same time, JavaScript developers can use part of the Python ecosystem on the browser. They can use NumPy, pandas, and things like this that it was not possible. So anyone actually thinking that PyScript is a drop-in replacement for JavaScript, that's a very different opinion than the PyScript team has. I want to stress, I want to talk a little about the platform. I've been mentioning PyScript as a platform, not as a framework. And the reason for that is that, I'll touch on that in a second. But I want also want to quote Peter Wang, who presented PyScript at PyCon, is a co-creator of PyScript with me. And talking, he mentioned something like, a system built on top of plugins from the start and get going is often an indication that engineers didn't know really what they needed to do or how the system should work. And so they add the concept of plugin to delegate that decision. And, I want to make sure that I want to talk about this because it's true in a lot of cases. But it's also true that we thought about plugins from the beginning, and not because we didn't know what to do, but mostly because the surface of things that are possible to do and the thing opening a new channel for Python users to use the browser as their medium will not be able to cover everything our users need. So it makes a lot of sense for us to build a strong platform that enables frameworks on top of it. So I've been using platform as a system that allows users to create frameworks, while frameworks are really systems that allow users to create applications. And showing that real quick, in terms of PyScript, if we look at it as a framework, it's a piece of software that allows users to create PyScript applications using that framework. That framework uses a whole ecosystem that was available, and like PyData or MicroPython for Python interpreter that relies on WASM and mscripting, and it provides APIs, and all of that is run by the browser. if we look at it at the lenses with the lenses of a platform, and that's what we want to achieve, is that actually we want to allow users to power users to actually create frameworks that then allow users to create applications. Let it be, I don't know, a framework that allows you to create websites very fast, or a framework that allows you to create presentations like this, slideshows, or a framework that allows you to create chatbots very fast, things like that. Well, again, I want to highlight, especially on this plugins part, everything is very in progress. So expect things to change and things to improve, but also things to break. I want to look at real quick some of the features of PyScript related to data science. But to do that, let's look at the architecture real quick. As you guessed before, PyScript sits on top of many layers that were there. We sit on top of shoulders, giant shoulders. Those giants are the community projects that made it happen. The easier ones to look at for PyScript, PyScript provides a layer on top of PyData. PyData itself provides Python, the packages, an interface to JavaScript, etc. PyData uses MemScript as a layer to communicate with WASM and actually compile CPython to WASM. And one very specific thing that is important for this community, in the PyData community, is that seeing the browser as a ubiquitous virtual machine actually help us target the problem of reproducibility of data science, and how can I run my code the same way I ran on my machine on other machines. If we use the browser as this common layer, then we have a very powerful layer that we can leverage and use, that we know is able to reproduce the same results. Really quick, because I really want to show the demos. This is how the PyScript looks like. It uses PyData under the hood. If I was to use just PyData, well, let me skip this one. If I also use just PyData, this is how it looks like when to install packages, load packages, and then to run a piece of code, a Python piece of code. And here it is. In PyScript, all you do, you create a configuration file, a tag, where you add your dependencies and things like this, and then you just write your Python code within the tag. PyScript also provides an element that is PyREPL that allows you to actually code in the browser real quick. And so, as an example, let me show. If you ever saw the anti-gravity module, you should be familiar with it. If not, you should open your Python interpreter and type import anti-gravity, and you will see that it pops up this nice comics in the browser. Well, PyScript is in the browser, so we thought we could do a little better or cooler, and we could do things interactively. So if I do import anti-gravity and then I do anti-gravity fly, we can actually make it fly in real time and use the power of the browser. But more than this, we can actually also run Python in the browser to create simulations and use data science tools. So if I execute this code, I can actually display a matplotlib doing this triangulation. Now let's go and look at more demos. So we have a lot of demos on the website. You should check it out. I'm focusing on some of these here, matplotlib, Seaborn, etc. But okay, we'll see them. So the first one, actually, this is not an image. This is actually a application that is running on this slideshow, and is actually displaying this chart using scikit-learn to explore a wine data set, and then leveraging pandas plotting to generate this scatter matrix of features. Another example, this is how the code looks like. We define the dependencies with a pyconfig tag, which, by the way, we just changed the interface, and we are changing packages and how you define those, but we'll look at that later. And then I just write Python code, and that's all I need to do. Same thing here. This is not an image. This is a plot that is showing the correlation on the same wine data set using Seaborn. And I also want to do some live demos. So, and actually display a lot of the cool work that the community has been doing. So here, let me show this live. Dylan Castillo tweeted a month or two ago, hey, I built this interactive cheat sheet, pandas cheat sheet to teach users how to learn pandas. And it runs on the browser. And you can define operations that you want to try out. And it has a specific data set that is already loaded. And it shows a snippet of code that you need to run for specific operations, and then you just use them. Now you can see how all of a sudden PyScript enables very powerful education paths and patterns, and how it can be used by package creators to help their community learn faster. Dylan Castillo also created this data viz cookbook where we can compare how plotting would look like differently with different plotting libraries. Like if I want to do a scatter plot with pandas, I would do this way. Sorry, I copied instead of running. And if I do it with Seaborn, that would be different. Matplotlib, etc., etc. Back to more community coolness. Jeff Glass, who's been doing a lot of great work and actually just recently became a PyScript core developer, tweeted a bunch of quick cool examples. I want to show this one, which is really cool. He basically wrote a PyScript app that uses Rich. Rich is a client, is a rich text library for the terminal. Actually, if you haven't used it to write CLIs, you should. It's amazing. But interestingly, a lot of the constructs that it has for the console, the terminal, actually work on the browser. So if I want to add a loading bar, this is how I do. If I want to have a highlighter, an exception, all those things would render on the terminal. They render just nicely on the browser. And I want to show a couple that are really cool. This is actually creating a table to show a movie list live. This other one is showing dynamic progress of whatever it is. This is a simulation. Or you can actually use it. You can use a mix of PyScript write elements to write at the DOM in the DOM with the Rich itself. Now, running for the sake of time, I also want to show a lot of the cool examples that Philip and the panel team created using PyScript and PyData. So, for instance, this is an application that runs on the browser and allows us to interact with data using panel. Everything is running on the browser. They also have a cool exploration panel that allows us to change data sets and explore data live. A DACGL example that allows us to run a simulation of the game of life.
Hello, Fabio. Thank you very much. I would like you to know that you have 5 minutes left for question and answers.
Yes. Let me just do one thing real quick. I want to show real quick two things. One, PyScript now supports, well, we're in the process of also supporting MicroPython that is 10 or 20 or more times faster than PyData, which is great. And we're very excited about it. And I also want to show appreciation for the community and the people behind PyScript. So congrats to the core devs, Fabio, Jeff, and Paul. And thanks to Antonio, Mariana, Maduro, Nicholas, and everyone else that was a part of this project. And thank you for your patience. Now, questions?
So please, if you have any question, now you can ask.
So I saw a question: is it callable from JS? Yes. I didn't actually manage to show, but Python can now call JavaScript libraries like D3 or others, for instance, and the same from JavaScript. You can actually from Python, you can expose your Python objects that are usable from JavaScript. So there's a two-way communication that you can leverage.
Okay. You have another question?
Another question that I see: how is data exchanged with JavaScript? PyData has this layer, JavaScript layer, and that basically Python objects become a Python proxy object for JavaScript, and JavaScript objects become a proxy object for Python, but they expose the same attributes. So they are transparently callable from one to the other.
Someone said from here, especially the one from Mac that can create panel apps from what's my panel app?
Not sure I entirely understand the question, but if the question is if you can create panel apps with PyScript and run on WASM, yes, you can run. It can create panel apps, bokeh apps, Seaborn. Pretty much most of what's available today works, and the PyData website actually has a list of packages that they ported that you can look at.
Okay, you can take this question as the last question. How do
Yes.
libraries work in the browser?
So if they're Python pure Python libraries that just work and they installed via micropip, which is the tool that is provided by PyData. If they are C, there are libraries that depend on C or Fortran or others. They need to be compiled. The PyData team did a great work compiling a lot of the PyData stack for PyData. You can check them out, and they also have instructions on how to build those. All of the modules work except things like different in the browser, like multiprocessing, writing, etc. If you join
Thank you
our
very much. Our time is over now. You can kindly move the discussion to discussion to the Discord. Thank you very much. We appreciate you for your talk and for being part of PyData Global 2022.